Could it be? Me, your man, Louie Tee. Welcome to Louie's Lurking in the Comments. I, of course, am your host, Louie Tee. Thank you for joining me. Really appreciate y'all for kicking it with the kid, continuing to support the content throughout this slow period in the summer. This is a concept that I've been doing for the last month or so, roughly, where I go in the comment section of videos that I've either uploaded or had live streams of, just to see what the conversation is like in the comment section. I pull the best comments or the ones that I think are worthy of discussion, and we do that. So credit to you guys for continuing to be very active in the comment section, keeping the conversation going after the video has been uploaded. This is basically an ode to you and all that you do here on the Louie Tee Network. With that said, this is episode 6 of Louie's Lurking in the Comments. And this is from the period of June 24th through July the 3rd. So we are now officially in the month of July, and we're getting ever so close to the start of training camp. So with that said, let's jump right into one of two videos that we will be lurking in the comments of today. This first one was a video I uploaded. I want to say it was last Friday, could have been last Thursday, but it was the training camp battles. And there are certain positions that I think are going to be, noteworthy and ones to keep a close eye on in training camp. I listed those positions, and I made sure that I said in the video that it's not just necessarily player versus player at said position. You also have to factor in that you could be looking at positions, right? And so you got to keep in mind that this year is going to be some really tough decisions. You keep 3 tight ends or 4. You keep 4 running backs or 3, right? Are you keeping 9 defensive linemen, 10 defensive linemen? Same with the offensive line. You keeping 5 safeties. You kept 6 last year, right? Are you going to keep 6 again this year? Going to cut that number down to 5 this year? Are there not 6 worthy safeties on the roster? Do you upgrade the linebacker position? Because last year, I think when the rosters were finalized, there were only, I think, 5 linebackers on the roster last year. But then remember, we ended up bringing on the special teams linebacker, like not too long thereafter. And obviously he was a huge part of what we did, and they re-signed him to a 2-year deal. So he's definitely on the roster this year. So not to mention you drafted Kane Madrano, and you got all the guys that were here last year at the linebacker position that were young, plus Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu. So again, it's a very interesting dynamic. And so I talked about a lot of those things in that video. So let's go through the comment section of that particular video and lurk a little bit, right? Or come out from lurking. 730 Rano writes, have they released training camp tickets? Are fans allowed in attendance? Did I miss something? I literally just talked about that in and I'm pretty sure you've seen that by now. They've already released that information. Most of the tickets are gone, right? But I just literally just talked about that in the video that I uploaded yesterday. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. But yeah, they have 6 open dates, 3 that are open to the general public. You have to get the tickets. Those are all sold out, by the way. Like, this fan base they're alive and kicking, and this is I remember last year them doing this, and the tickets went quick, but they didn't. These tickets sold out like it was a Beyonce concert or something, right? Like this was Taylor Swift. Like, these tickets were gone like that. And then there are 3 more dates that are just specifically for season ticket holders. Specific season ticket holders each have a day. So that's the update on the training camp tickets. Gerard BTV writes, bro, love your grind. Let's work. I agree about the 4 running backs. I think they want to use Wiley too, but P-Squad it is for him, unless cliffhanger. But McNugget is a fiend on special teams, like you said. Feed! That's truly when his speed shows, LOL, without the ball in his hand. You're not wrong about that part, about his speed showing, because you generally don't see McNichols' speed when he has the ball. It's when he doesn't have the football that you actually see his speed. I think we might have seen McNichols' speed one time last year, and that was the Arizona game with the ball in his hands. When he had the touchdown down the left sideline, you generally get to see him run really, really fast in a straight line on special teams when he gets to go down and try to make a tackle. So they really love what he brings on special teams, which is why I just find it very hard to believe that if they keep 4 running backs, he's not one of the 4. Now, if they keep 3, he's going to be the guy on the outside looking in. But we all know what the numbers game is and why teams do the things that they do, because you keep the guys that you think you can, you cut the guys that you think you'll be able to get back on your practice squad. Sometimes it's as simple as that. And you keep guys that maybe aren't better, but if you cut them, they may have value elsewhere around the league, and someone may pick them up. So in order to avoid that, you just go ahead and cut, that guy. You keep that guy, and you cut someone else that probably should be on the roster, but if you cut them, you can get them back on your practice squad. So that's, Jeremy McNichols. They know they're not losing Michael Wiley, pretty much is what I'm saying. So unless he goes out and just, flashes in a major way in the preseason, and then they feel like, well, we need to find a way to hold on to this guy. But I just think most teams are keeping their stuff. They're not really worried about your stuff necessarily. Mike Hughes writes, Hartman is going to be the next TH4. I think he stays in Washington as JD's backup for the next 10 years, though. I don't know about all of that. I just know that Sam Hartman, they're grooming him to be a backup here in Washington. How that goes, most teams, and I don't know if, because when we talk about, I always talk about with AP in particular, you got to take into consideration where he's been and how they did things and their philosophical beliefs, and did that rub off on him? And did that become now one of his philosophical beliefs? If you look at the San Francisco 49ers, they draft a quarterback late in the draft every, 2-3 years, whether they had a starter or not, right? Whether it was Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy, they draft another young quarterback. Like they just drafted another young quarterback this year, did San Francisco. That's their MO. That's the thing that Kyle Shanahan in particular likes to do. I don't know if that rubbed off on Adam Peters or not. And you could see, Hartman going into year 3, them feeling good enough about him as a veteran where they don't have to have Marcus Mariota here anymore. And Hartman goes to QB2. And, as long as they're competing for a Super Bowl in this Jaden Daniels rookie contract window, I just can't see them not bringing a veteran on. It's when they have to pay him big money. They don't want a lot of money tied up in the, quarterback position. That's when you maybe start penny pinching. But as long as you're a Super Bowl contender, you probably need a backup quarterback that you believe that if something happens to your guy, you're not screwed. I don't envision them feeling that way about Sam Hartman for at least another year or 2. But we'll see what happens with him. The rapport between he and Jaden is exceptional. He's one of those glue guys that we don't talk about a lot, is Sam Hartman, because he's a rookie or a second-year quarterback that shouldn't see the field in any capacity. But I know they like him. I know they like his ability to communicate in that room. And I don't think he's going anywhere, for the foreseeable future. 10 years, though, I don't know if he's going to be one of those Jim Kelly backup, Peyton Manning's backup quarterback where, guys that never get hurt. They've got like a permanent backup that really can't play in the league. But because the guy that they're behind never gets hurt, they never had to play. I forget the guy's name that I'm trying to think of, who was a backup for so long and he really sucked. He was backing up Peyton Manning too for years. But he couldn't play. The difference was in Buffalo. Their backup could play, right? He was the one that led the comeback. I don't know why I'm blanking on him, because he was a head coach in the NFL for a number of years. I don't know why I can't think of his name. I think he just retired too. Frank Wright, right? Frank Wright was the backup in Buffalo, but he could actually play. The one I'm trying to think of was in Indianapolis behind Peyton Manning, and he stunk. And he was holding the clipboard for years because Peyton never got hurt. And then he finally had to play when Peyton got the neck injury, and he came in and he was straight ass. And they realized we got to get us a real backup quarterback because this guy stinks. Can't think of his name though. Mike Hughes also says, so basically they need to cut 20 guys. Yeah, 17. The 17. 16 because TJ Mang is safe, which he is, IPP program. Is on the practice squad, can be stolen. Only 6 guys have more than 2 years of NFL experience, with the rest being 1-2 year guys. So that might factor into the practice squad / active squad decision as well. Absolutely. All those things are taken into consideration. But with the new flexibility of the practice squad, it being extended, not mattering how long you've played or not, it really helps with the decisions that they make now. A lot more so than it used to. Mike also says might be able to stash someone like Wiley on the practice squad, which they did last year, and I assume they're going to do that again this year, barring some kind of crazy set of circumstances, as opposed to McNichols. Another team is less likely to pick up Wiley. Exactly what I said earlier, right? Yep. Unless he goes crazy in the preseason, and even then, I still think he's going to be a guy that should be able to hang around, but you just never know. Like, yeah, he may get to the practice squad initially, and then 5 weeks into the season, a team has a rash of injuries at the running back position, and they remember Wiley going off in the preseason, and then they come and get him. Right, that happens too. So you just never know, right? 17 total PS, practice squad guys. International pathway player being one, absolutely, which is TJ Mang, we just brought up. 11 guys have 11 have to be guys who are rookies or on their second year in the league. And so and then 6 can be vets who have more than 2 years in the league. You just can't keep 10 veterans if you want it. And so I think that's the way they would have done it anyway, right? They weren't going to load up on veterans. Teams want young developmental guys. And that's kind of why they set it up this way, is because you want young guys. That's what the practice squad is really designed for, which is what it was before. Like, you couldn't have veterans. It had to be young guys because there's no real developmental league, although the UFL is sort of that, but it really isn't that. So this is the best way the NFL can help develop players who aren't necessarily ready to contribute right away, right? So yes, it's great to have veterans there because that can help, right? We saw that with this team in particular last year. We had a rash of injuries on the defensive line. Having a guy like Sheldon Day, right, be able to step in and play for you was huge for us, right? I don't know what we would have done in certain instances with some of our positions if we didn't have veterans that could step in last year in particular. So great points made there by Mike Hughes. MF Quote says, I think the biggest battle of the offseason is the right guard position until Cosmi comes back, because it's still a question who's going to take that spot. I didn't put that down as a big battle and I said the offensive line will sort itself out, but I really think it's going to be Nick Allegretti's job, to be honest with you. I don't really see it being a battle. Until Cosmi's ready, Nick Allegretti is here for this exact reason. I think the offensive line is pretty much set when we're healthy, right? And even if Cosmi is not ready, and I'm not denouncing Cosmi being ready yet. I am still holding out hope that Cosmi somehow, some way will be ready come week 1. But the likelihood is he'll be ready sometime in mid-October. That's my guess. But the Cowboys game in week 7 will be his first game of the season. That's what I think. But that's nor here nor there. The bottom line is it's from left to right, and this is what I think it is. I don't think this is going to change. And if everyone's healthy, this is what the offensive line looks like week 1. All right. Let me Tunsil at left tackle, Brandon Coleman at left guard, Tyler Biadasz at center, Nick Allegretti at right guard, and our rookie Josh Connolly Jr. at right tackle. That's it. And they're not putting Andrew Wiley at guard because he's our swing tackle this year. And so this is all about Nick Allegretti just staying healthy and continuing to be the guy that he was for us last year. If he's that, he's the right guard. I don't really think it's a battle, but we'll see. You never know, right? But that's what it feels like to me. Money Shot, thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, I do not think Michael Gallup is making this roster. He says, at all. DQ lent his hand out because Gallup had no other opportunities elsewhere. This is DQ's way of saying, I'll give you a chance to show what you have to other teams. I think that is crazy talk, Money Shot. This isn't a charity case. DQ isn't out here giving guys opportunities to show what they can do for the rest of the league. They could care less about Michael Gallup showcasing what he can. Michael Gallup isn't his best friend. Even if he really likes Michael Gallup and wanted to do something like that for him, he wouldn't do that, taking up a roster spot. It's all about competition. If DQ didn't think Michael Gallup was worthy of helping his team, they worked him out prior to signing him, right? Multiple times. They didn't work him out once. They worked him out twice. And then they signed him the second time. They would not have signed him if they didn't think he had anything left in the tank, if they didn't think he could contribute on this team and be a part of this team. He may not make this roster, and you may ultimately be right, but it's not because he doesn't stand a chance and DQ's just doing him a solid. He's here because they think he could ultimately be one of the 6 best receivers that can help this team in the 2025 season. That's why he's here. Now, whether he ultimately ends up being that is another discussion. He can't stay healthy because he wasn't able to do it during the spring, which makes sense. The man didn't play football last year. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that he had a soft tissue injury. But if he's healthy throughout camp and he looks like the Michael Gallup, prior to the injury, or even a lesser version of that, which is still better than what we would be bringing onto this roster as a 6th or 7th option, he's going to make this team. Like I said, he's got the inside track to me of that final, because I think the first 5 wide receiver spots, I think, are spoken for. So the real conversation is who's going to be the 6th wide receiver. Is it one of the young guys or is it Michael Gallup? And I would even say don't sleep on David Moore. I don't think it's going to be David Moore. But I would say 5 of the spots are spoken for, and Michael Gallup, David Moore, KJ Osborne, and the young guys are competing for, one of those final spots. And it feels like Gallup has the inside track, but there's no guarantees. But this isn't a DQ solid to Michael Gallup. He's not showcasing him to the rest of the league. I don't agree with that. Cargo Wash writes, Luke's not more talented than Brooks. This Luke hate from some of you, most of you understand what Luke McCaffrey is, but some of you have this axe to grind with Luke for whatever reason. I don't know if because he's white and he's a receiver, because he didn't do anything in his rookie season, which is also asinine. I just don't understand where some of this Luke hate is coming from. But there's been enough of it where it's just like, okay, let's just see what the guy can do. I don't understand why we have to jump to some conclusion that he's ass as a receiver or he can't do it. Luke is not more talented than Brooks. I disagree with that, first and foremost. And talented, we'll see, right? He's more athletic than Brooks. Athleticism and talent don't always go hand in hand, but he works, does Luke. He wants to be great. He comes from a football bloodline that is undeniable, and he's way more athletically gifted. There's a reason Brooks did not get drafted, by the way. Not one team, all 32 teams said, no, we're good on him. Luke barely got a ship out of high school. He was a 6'2" quarterback, dual threat quarterback. That may have something to do with it, right? Again, can't speak to what he did in high school, what he didn't do in high school. Brooks was a Bama wide receiver. Again, super talented high school player, was solid in college, right? But again, lack of athleticism. This ain't high school. This ain't college. This is the pros, right? Luke wouldn't have gotten drafted if we didn't draft him. That's a crazy statement, by the way. That the man went in the 3rd round. It's not like we drafted him in the 6th round and teams had 6 rounds to pass on him and then we plucked him in the 6th or the 7th round. That's a crazy statement to say that he wouldn't have gotten drafted. Maybe he wouldn't have gone in the 3rd round. Maybe he wouldn't have gone in the 4th round. Someone would have taken Luke McCaffrey in the 5th round probably. That's crazy to say. Luke gets a pass because he's been a wide receiver for 2 years. Yeah, not necessarily a pass as much as you have to take that into consideration when you look at his production. Now he's going to be a receiver for a year 3. Yeah, that does come with the territory. And, oh, by the way, he was a rookie last year. We have to stop acting like rookies have to come in here and be 1,000-yard receivers. Cut that nonsense out. He's not as good as Brooks at all. Well, I guess time will tell now, won't it? Won't it? We will find out. Anthony Wilson writes, J-Mac had 1 tackle on special teams. Wiley can return kicks and he can make people miss. It's not about the tackles on special teams. Yeah, you want guys to go down there and make tackles. You want guys that are going to have an impact on special teams. Being on special teams is like being a defensive lineman. Doesn't always show up on a stat sheet, but we can feel impact. You can see impact, you can feel impact, and J-Mac is an impact special teams guy. And because of that, and his ability to block as a wide receiver, a running back for the quarterback on passing situations, he showed his worth in those types of situations. The Atlanta game, the Cincinnati game, the Arizona game, the Tennessee game, when he got in there and he made his presence felt. There's a lot that he brings to the table that that Wiley may not bring to the table just yet, right? But Michael Wiley will get his opportunity here. I believe that opportunity may come as early as this year, but more likely than not next year. But J-Mac's ability on special teams to get down there, to force a guy to stop his feet, to change directions. He may not make the tackle, but it was his pursuit that forced that guy to get off of his trajectory and then have to change directions and run into someone else. Or it's him blowing up a wedge, which aren't allowed anymore. But, you know, it was him getting down there, causing a ruckus that made the running back or the return man stop his feet. Now here comes Tyler Owens or Jeremy Reeves or some other player, Nick Ballore, to come make a tackle. So you can't just look at how many tackles he made and say, well, he didn't have that big of an impact. Why we keep talking about him as a special teams player? He plays all special teams. That's number 1. And number 2, he's actually really good at it. He's actually really good at it. Ray J writes, Ja'Cory Brooks versus Michael Gallup is probably the biggest battle. And again, we keep elevating Ja'Cory Brooks. I don't see him being anything more than a practice squad player this year. I think it's Michael Gallup. It's all the veterans, to be honest with you. It's all the veteran receivers that are battling for this last spot. Now, again, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what is going to happen. But the likelihood is it's going to be a veteran. There's going to be veterans occupying, you know, those final wide receiver spots when it's all said and done. Perry Caldwell writes, yeah, QB, not this time. Now, I did mention quarterback is a, you know, position to watch because with the rules set up the way that they are, every team in the league should be taking advantage of the quarterback rules and keeping 3 quarterbacks on their roster. Now, on your game day roster, you're not going to keep 3 quarterbacks active. You don't have to, because the 3rd quarterback can dress as an emergency quarterback. I just think it just makes too much sense to take advantage of that. With that said, we kept 3 quarterbacks last year, right? 2 of them were veterans. Hartman was not one of them, and then he ended up being on the practice squad. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that's how it went last year. I think they're going to do the same thing again this year, right? Keep 3 quarterbacks. Is Hartman one of them? That's the question. Or is it Josh Johnson? And if you cut Josh Johnson, as we know, he makes his way around the league. Baltimore will come back and get him like they always do. There are other teams that, you know, have mobile quarterbacks that may say, hey, you know, Josh can give us a lift for the next 2 weeks, whatever. I don't know if they feel comfortable cutting him, whereas they know if they cut Sam Hartman, he can be back in the fold as a practice squad player. So I was just saying, is it Sam Hartman time to finally make this roster and be the emergency quarterback every week? Or is it Josh Johnson still? And I'm trying to think, did we keep Jeff Driscoll around last year? I'm pretty sure we did. I feel like we did. Let me check. I feel like we kept Jeff Driscoll around last year. I got it right here. Yeah, we kept Jeff Driscoll around last year. So, in my mind, the same thing kind of applies this year. You keep 3 quarterbacks, and Hartman's not the third quarterback. That's why I said it could be a competition, because Hartman could be the third quarterback, and Josh Johnson could be like, "Hey, bro, we would love to have you on the practice squad," and then somebody else will probably come snatch him up. But we'll see. That's what I was referencing, not 1 or 2. Last year we were trying to make a controversy out of number 2. None of us were like, "Yo, we want to see." Some people, I guess, might have been like, "Yo," I guess the ones that were maybe a little bit butthurt about this team not drafting Drake May or something like that might have been like, "Yo, put Mariota in." But the vast majority of us were like, "Yo, let Jaden cook. Let the young fella get out there and let it rip." We were talking crazy. I know I was. I can't speak for you. I was talking crazy about Mariota last year. Real reckless out the side of my neck. Not that I didn't want him here, but I was like, "Yo, put in Jeff Driscoll as the second quarterback." I was tripping. Big time tripping. Infinity writes, Michael Gallup doesn't really play special teams. So if he isn't a top 4 receiver, he is eating a roster space. Truthfully, top 3, ideally, Gallup makes the third wide receiver spot. Not sure that happens. Noah Brown plays special teams. These are all things that they will take into consideration, right? If Michael Gallup can be a serious contributor at receiver, they don't give a damn if he plays special teams or not. That's the thing that we don't know, is, does Michael Gallup contribute at a level that warrants a roster spot or not? Because that is something that they take into consideration. Does he play special teams? Which he doesn't. We already know that. So, we'll see. That's a great point, Infinity. But I think they see him as a guy that can contribute on offense in a major way, which is why he's going to probably have a roster spot if he's able to showcase that throughout the summer and into the preseason. Money Shot, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Once again, writes, I think Farrell is in a battle, especially with Kinlaw being able to play edge and all along the line. Farrell, to me, is in fact in a battle, but I think it is a battle that unless he cannot stay healthy, he will win, because while we have depth along the defensive line, he's a part of that depth, right? He's a part of that depth. I don't see them cutting Clelin Ferrell. Great locker room guy, very productive in terms of, his ability to play the run and occasionally get a hustle sack. We saw him do that last year, early in the season, especially. Then he had the sack force fumble against Philadelphia last year. So I think they view Clelin Ferrell in small spurts as a good depth piece. I see him being on this roster, but he's no lock like he was last year. Last year he was a starter. He was a lock. He's no lock this year, but he feels like he's pretty comfortably in the fold. I'll say that. All right, so that was the camp battles video. Now we're gonna go to the Ode to Kliff video. So to jump in here, knock out these comments, and then we'll be done lurking in the comments for this week. Earl Bruce starts us off here, and he writes, I think Kliff enjoys working with Jedi 5 and learning how to balance the head coaching job from DQ. When the right opportunity presents itself, he will move on then. We'll see if DQ's succession plan works or not. Will his plan focus on evolving the offense and building on the past, or innovating for the future? These are all great points, Earl. I agree with 100% of this comment. And even the questions are great ones to be asked, because we don't know the answers to those. But that's going to be a huge determining factor as to whether the success continues once Kliff is no longer our offensive coordinator. So I think you are spot on about him learning about the head coaching gig and really getting his all of his ducks kind of lined up and really learning how to balance, because that's something he struggled with the first time around in Arizona. So he's even said he's learned so much from DQ already, and he's continuing to see, because there are times he wants to be impulsive and do things, and DQ's like, no, this is how we do it. And the biggest thing he's learned is how to create an environment, how to create culture. He didn't have that in Arizona. He didn't have that. He was getting cussed out by players on the sidelines. I don't know if, and he was cool with that. Like as a play caller, you get the emotions run high sometimes, but I think Kliff's biggest lesson that he's learned is how to set the tone from the word go. He's like, DQ set the tone immediately when he got the job. And I don't think he did that when he was in Arizona. And I think he really is seeing how it's supposed to look. And those questions that you asked, Earl, are fantastic questions, because that's always the worry when you have a young quarterback like Jaden Daniels and you don't have an offensive-minded head coach. That's always the worry is, all right, can we keep this going? Can we have the right succession plan in place? Because if Jaden's a superstar like we think he is, he's going to get guys head coaching jobs repeatedly. This won't be the last time we have to replace an offensive coordinator. It's the first of many, because we have a defensive-minded head coach. So can you keep hitting it big at the coordinator position? Can you keep pressing the right button? That's the question. That's the million-dollar question. How long is it before you have to go outside of what you've created to keep the offense going? And that's when it gets scary, right? The good thing is, no matter what you do with coordinator, when you got a guy like Jaden, it's going to be okay. But are you maximizing what it could be? Is the key question that you have to ask. The lead commander writes, I think Anthony Lynn will be Kliff's replacement, but he will continue with Kliff's offensive system. We'll see. Anthony Lynn and the way he wants to call plays, we have evidence of that. We've got proof of what Anthony Lynn is as a head coach and as an offensive play caller. And his offense looks nothing like Kliff's. So I can't say that he would make sense to be the next choice in line. As a matter of fact, I would say he's not the next choice in line, because he's more of a run-oriented guy. Go ask Chargers fans, they'll tell you. Go ask Bills fans, they'll tell you. You know, the Bills were, I think, the #1 rush team in the league when he was the offensive coordinator in Buffalo. Like, that's not what we're set up to be. That's not who we want to be. So we'll see, right? We'll see what it looks like. Dougalicious writes, man, I was optimistic about Kliff after the diabolical job that EB did. I have a best friend who's a Cardinals fan who kept telling me to tempt my expectations, so I wasn't expecting an offensive explosion. So seeing the development of the offense game after game was special to see. Just like you said, Lou, when he stated players, not plays, I was ecstatic, and that's when I became more confident about Kliff. You know, sometimes you have to take a grain of salt. Take what fans of another fan base say about a coach, a player, with a grain of salt. I don't ignore it. Again, I take that into consideration, but every situation is different. And, you know, the biggest thing was Kliff was a head coach there. He was not an offensive coordinator. And so it's a lot. His role was a lot different there than it is here. That said, you know, you look at a coach like O-line Bobby Johnson, and how, you know, poorly the Giants fans thought of him. And even Buffalo fans were kind of lukewarm. We thought he did a fantastic job last year, given the circumstances. He did a fantastic job with this offensive line. We trust him now. He's gained our trust. Maybe not to the extent some of the other coaches may have, but you're not shitting on O-line Bobby Johnson the way we were last year this time when he had just been brought on and we were like, oh my God, why did they give this guy a job? So you can't always go off of what another fan base says, but sometimes there is validity to that. When fans like, yo, he stinks. And you're like, nah, he's going to be different here. Like, Chargers fans tried to tell me last year, yo, Michael Davis stinks. And I was like, no, he's going to be fine. No, Michael Davis stinks. They were right. And so sometimes you have to take that into consideration. They can only speak from experience, right? Tim Scruggs. I don't think any of us were expecting the offensive explosion we got last year, by the way, Dougalicious. None of us were. So you're not alone in that. Tim Scruggs said, my most exciting hire was Kliff and Anthony Lynn because they were head coaches. Also like Norton with his connections. I did have confidence in Quinn for the defense, though. My thing with Quinn was I thought we were getting a major upgrade in defense. And while the defense was much better, it wasn't what I thought we were getting year one. And my expectations for the defense were probably unreasonable. If I'm being honest right now, my expectations for the defense were unreasonable given that we didn't have any real talent, or the talent was sparse. So I probably was in the wrong there. Just thinking, okay, here comes DQ. Joe Witt was with him, and he knows what DQ wants to do and how they want to execute things. We about to turn this defense around. We about to start forcing turnovers. And didn't happen, right? MF Quote says, I love Kliff so much. Watching a Scott Turner offense was so depressing, barely scoring over 15 points a game. I guess we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Jeep Commander, thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, 100% agree with DQ hire and Kliff hire. DQ surprised me for the best, and Kliff, I was hopeful, but really didn't know. But Kliff worked with JD5 perfectly by bringing him along slowly and adding more and more and called games that were awesome. Kliff now has even more of the playbook that he can dial up this year, since we should have better O-line play, and that opens it up so we don't have to chip on every pass play, so more receivers can be out in the pass patterns and give JD5 more options. And I'm sure Kliff is happy as an OC with the additions AP has given him in Debo, Tunsil, Connolly Jr., Lane, JCM, and not even mentioning the second-year players that should make big jumps. This is 100% spot on. I wasn't against the DQ hire. And, this is what you have to take. It's easy to have revisionist history, and I've said this before. I think I even said it on the video, Ode to Kliff. But it's easy to have revisionist history about DQ. And hell, even Kliff, like there were people that were against Kliff, but there were people that looked at his tenure in Arizona and said, oh, why are we bringing this guy here? That's human nature. That's what fans do, right? Because a lot of our fans don't know what Kliff was doing in Arizona. They didn't know what he did in Texas Tech. They didn't know Kliff's background, right? They just know that he was a loser in the NFL. So why do we want to bring him here? Same with DQ, right? A lot of people didn't know what. All they remember is he lost the Super Bowl. They don't even know how good he was in Atlanta, and how good he was in Dallas as a defensive coordinator. They just know he lost the Super Bowl in one of the most epic collapses in NFL history. And there was a thing in Atlanta for blowing leads. Like DQ had an issue with holding on the leads as the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. But at the end of the day, he was exactly what we needed. I think a lot of us were just stuck on Ben Johnson or the coach that's in Seattle, right? The defensive coordinator at the time that was coming from Baltimore. And then, probably a little bit distant third, though, was the offensive coordinator at the time of the Houston Texans. Like, we just wanted something new, right? A new shiny toy at head coach. We didn't want something used that you got from Goodwill. We didn't want to retread. That was what it basically boiled down to. We were stuck on Ben Johnson. He wasn't the choice, obviously. Then we turned our attention to those coordinators. And both of them got snatched up. And we were the last team to hire a coach. So everything was gone. But it wasn't because everything was gone they chose DQ. They circled DQ and highlighted him as a guy. And the only reason they didn't hire him is they still wanted to talk to Ben Johnson, who went to the NFC Championship game that year. So they wanted to wait to talk to him and Aaron Glenn. Otherwise, DQ would have probably been hired already. So they knew DQ was the guy. MF Quotes writes, can't decide who's the worst play caller, Scott Turner or Eric Bieniemy. It was Eric Bieniemy for me. Like, I know people shit on Scott Turner. I actually like Scott Turner. I told you guys for the 2 years he was here, 2.5 years, I think he got fired after year 2, I believe. No, he got fired after year 3. So I told y'all for it got bad that last year, really bad that last year, but the roster was really bad that last year in 2022 for him. But I said his biggest issue was situational awareness. He didn't understand that it's players, not plays. So we would go stretches without Terry getting a look. And then he would be almost flummoxed, like, oh, I didn't know Terry didn't, like, bro, what the hell, right? And he was so caught up in his play sheet and, but then for someone that was so caught up in the play sheet, he would lose sight of, bro, it's 3rd and 2. Like, what are we doing? It's 4th and 1. Why are we doing this? Like, situationally, he was unaware of what to do. His red zone offense was garbage. His offense inside the 5 was hideous. We couldn't convert a 2-point conversion. We couldn't score from the 2-yard line. Just go back to the Titans game in 2021 as a great example of how poorly, or 2022 rather, how poorly we executed inside the 5. But Eric Bieniemy just stunk, period. Just period. He was awful. He didn't run the ball at all. Like, Eric Bieniemy was a tyrant who wasn't good at his job. You can be a tyrant when you're excellent at what you do. Eric Bieniemy was a tyrant and he wasn't very good. Like, that's a problem. That's a problem. So I'll take Scott Turner over him. Jeep Commander, thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, the only thing I am hoping for is Tavita Pritchard and David Blau are taking great notes and learning from Kliff, because I do believe that Kliff is going to get a job that he thinks will be right for him this year if all goes the way we think it's going to be. Absolutely. I believe, and I could be wrong. It could be similar to Ben Johnson, after the team got to the NFC Championship game, wanted to come back, felt like there was unfinished business. If this team goes to the NFC Championship game again, or they go to the Super Bowl and they fall short, and he's like, I got unfinished business, just like Ben Johnson did, he may decide to come back. He's still being paid by the Arizona Cardinals, so there's no rush necessarily. But, again, if the Cincinnati Bengals move on, and that's the job I think would be perfect for Kliff Kingsbury, by the way. If the Cincinnati Bengals move on from Zach Taylor this year, because if they don't go to the playoffs, Zach Taylor's fired. That's the job. If I'm Kliff Kingsbury, I want to coach Joe Burrow. That's the job that I'm hunting for. He's gone. Like, if that opportunity is on the table for him, he's gone. And if he does what we think he's going to do, because we think Jaden Daniels is going to be in the MVP conversation this year, if that happens, that can't happen without Kliff Kingsbury getting a lot of the praise and notoriety from that. So understand that this very well could be Kliff's last year here. We don't know that, but the likelihood is, if this season looks anything like last season, it probably is. Again, the jobs that are open and available are going to have a lot to do with that, because if they're jobs with quarterback situations that aren't ideal, Kliff isn't leaving here to go try to salvage a bad situation, right? He wants to go into a situation because he's going to have that ability, like Ben Johnson, going to have the ability to cherry pick his situation. You can wait, or if the opportunity is great, you can take off. Rum Team, and to your point, they're grooming Tavita Pritchard and David Blau, right? Like those, and Brian Johnson, don't forget about him. They're guys here that I think they have waiting in the wings to be the next offensive coordinator. So we'll see what ultimately happens. Rum Team, one of my favorite quotes from Kliff Kingsbury. I love this one. He writes, when the money's on the table, we want the ball in Terry's hand. Damn right. That was the one where I said he gets it. It's just not lip service. He gets it. And Terry having the touchdown numbers this year that dwarfed his previous career high is evident that when the money's on the table, they wanted to go to their guys. Terry McLaurin, Zach Ertz. Those are the guys they wanted to go to. Derek Stewart writes, the NFL better be ready for the onslaught the Commanders offense is about to unleash. It's going to be brutal. Go Commanders. Raise hell. I think that most of us feel like this season has a chance to be special. And, in past years, the PTSD would be kicking in and I would be like hesitant to be boisterous and bullish. I'm not. 5 has instilled a level of confidence in me. DQ and his staff have infused me with so much confidence that you can't tell me nothing about this team and what, the potential is, especially on offense. I still am definitely not sold on the defense and have questions about the defense. But this offense, you can't tell me that this offense isn't going to be one of the best in football this year. You just can't. So we'll see what happens. DMV Skin 804 writes, no cap, when we hired DQ, I was acting a damn fool on the press conference chat. But when we hired Kliff and Ken Norton Jr., I was like, nah, we got us one. It's crazy because there were a lot of people cutting up. When he was first hired, a lot of people. It gave me, like, some of you aren't old enough to remember this, but it gave me the same vibes when it was initially reported that we were going to hire John Fossil years ago. Jim Fossil. I think his son is John. Jim Fossil years ago. And we revolted. I did. I revolted, and a lot of season ticket holders were like, "Hey, if you hire him, we getting rid of our season tickets." And Dan Snyder and the crew heard that loud and clear, and so they pivoted and hired Jim Zorn. So that backfired on us as fans. So yeah, that's kind of the vibe I got when he was first hired. Like, a lot of people were like upset, but I think also what gave him an opportunity to come in here was the clean slate, new ownership, new GM. Everybody's like, let's just see what happens. And then DQ coming in here and speaking, I think he turned a lot of people around. And then when he was able to amass the staff that he was, I think it also gave a lot of people confidence. But it's easy for people to say they were excited about this guy, that guy. I know I hyped up the staff because it felt like an all-star cast of coaches, and it proved to be the case this year. So KMC writes, I gave Kliff a clean slate when the hire was announced, because some dudes are just better suited as coordinators because they're able to totally stay in their element. Kliff excelled and shut people up regarding the Kliff thing. He did. And looking back at the season, the slump we saw in November was more about Jaden's ribs than the actual offense getting figured out. Kliff was more conservative while Jaden was recovering. Once Jaden healed up, the offense picked back up. This is a great comment. I really believe that the Kliff thing got traction because it happened right at the point where the Kliff thing used to happen in Arizona. And that's when it happened literally simultaneously with the injury to Jaden, right? And so those two happened in concert, and it gave life to something that I don't think was necessarily true. And I think we saw that once Jaden's ribs, were finally healed and they were confident in opening up the playbook again, the offense was just fine, and there was no such thing as a Kliff, at least not here in Washington. Lee Rubenstein, fire up that grill, Louie. I'm ready for some more 40 burgers. Aren't we all? Hey, the grill is already hot. It's ready. You toss over the 40 burgers, I'll put them on the grill. I'll put them on the grill. You know what it is. Fat Hot Dog writes, just a thought, since we're pretty sure Kliff will leave after this season, which, again, highly likely, but we're not sure about that. But it's highly likely if the success continues with this team and jobs open up that, would interest Kliff, which I think is going to happen. How would you feel about Brian Daboll if he gets fired as his replacement? I think the replacement is in-house, not someone outside of the building right now. You don't start looking for guys like that until after you've exhausted everybody in the building that you trust. We're far from that. That's why they've got Tavita Pritchard and Brian Johnson and all of the guys, David Blau, that they've kept on board, because they're preparing themselves for when or if Kliff Kingsbury gets a job. And so I don't think we're looking at guys on the outside coming in. Commander Cole writes, we better enjoy this year with Kliff because there's no shot he's here next year. If the success continues, you're probably right. You're probably right. Also, Another World says, looking back, DQ's issue was a bad loss in the Super Bowl. That was our issue as fans. Go ahead and scratch your head. We laughed at the meme of him walking through the airport, a NFC champion coach. We made fun of him as a losing fan base ourselves. After further review, I see now why folks would treat us like Eddie Kane. But most of us are back. And like you always say, Louie, feels good. I do think that a lot of fans looked at that. I talked about that already. But I do think a lot of fans looked at that and said, yeah, we don't want him here. But I also think it had a lot to do with we just wanted something different. Most fan bases don't want a retread coach unless it's someone with Super Bowl pedigree. You know, that's just where we were in our process. We were so stuck on Ben Johnson. You know, we were so stuck on all of the young guys that were coordinators that were coming up in the game, and we just wanted our own young coach. And really, a lot of us, taking it a step further, a lot of us were like, we want an offensive-minded guy to pair with our young quarterback. We didn't know who the young quarterback was going to be, but whatever that young quarterback was, we just wanted a young offensive-minded coach to go with him, right? That was the mindset. I think DQ was just caught in the crossfire of all of those emotions. But you're not wrong. You know, you're not wrong about us being upset about DQ. A lot of people being upset about him, at least. Off to another world, right? Kliff is getting head coach pay from the Cardinals, plus what he makes here. If he does take another head coaching job, you wonder if he takes Hartman with it. That's very interesting because a lot of times when a coach leaves, the first thing they do is they reach back and grab one of the backup quarterbacks to help install his offense where he's going. That would make a lot of sense if he took Sam Hartman with him, or Marcus Mariota for that matter, right? Because he's going to be a free agent next year too. So it would be very interesting to see what he does and how many people, because if he leaves here, he's going to take one of the young coaches, right, and give them an offensive coordinator job. If we don't promote them here, he could take David Blau. Both Blau and Tavita Pritchard and Brian Johnson all can't be the offensive coordinator. So in theory, Kliff could leave and say, you know what? I loved working with Tavita Pritchard. I love working with David Blau. Blau, why don't you come be my offensive coordinator? Now, technically, Kliff is going to be calling the plays more likely than not. And if you truly want to call the plays, then you'll be like, nah, I think I'll stay here. But if you want the title and wherever Kliff goes is successful, you're going to benefit from that. So if you're David Blau, who is an assistant right now as a quarterbacks coach, wouldn't you want the opportunity to be an offensive coordinator? Yeah, you damn right you would, even if you're not calling the plays. We saw what Sean McVay was able to do with guys that were offensive coordinators and how that worked out for them. The Green Bay coach was an offensive coordinator under Sean McVay, didn't call a single play. He got a job, and it worked out really well for him. You know, Zach Taylor got a head coaching job. I think he was the quarterbacks coach in L.A. with Sean McVay. The running joke was, if you just got Sean McVay as a contact in your phone, you were getting a head coaching gig, right? So that's something else to look out for. That's something else we don't talk about. We're just talking about succession plans. He's going to yank and pull a few of these coaches along with him, right? That's the thing about when guys leave, they usually take some of the coaches with them and kind of guts your staff a little bit. So that's something else to think about that we really haven't talked about. That's a great point. Off to another world. Jonathan Lang, thank you for the super chat, or thank you for the comment. Writes, someone is going to have to learn Kliff's offense and way of thinking. Not sure if it will be Pritchard, Blau, maybe Wes Welker, or maybe they'll bring someone else and use a different offense, or just add to Kliff's and use a hybrid of the offense with a lot of Jaden's input. That's the question we don't know. It feels like it's going to be one of those guys, you know, throw Brian Johnson in that mix as well. But I don't think you can ask someone to change the way that they think and view offense. What you can say is, hey, we want you to adopt some of Kliff's philosophies and, you know, some of the concepts maybe. But you can't ask someone to think the way Kliff thinks. Kliff is unique. He's Kliff. You can't ask Brian Johnson or Tavita Pritchard or David Blau to be, you know, Kliff. Like Tavita Pritchard said, Kliff Kingsbury and him, they are from two different worlds. Remember, Tavita Pritchard came from Stanford under David Shaw. You know, they were running 3 tight ends like 60% of the game and running the football 35, 40 times a game. That's where he came from as a coordinator. So to see someone spreading it out, going pace and space, and throwing it all around the yard, and not like Kliff's out here throwing it 45 times a game, but they're on separate ends of the spectrum. You can't ask Tavita Pritchard to just totally abandon what he thinks from an offensive perspective. He can adopt some of what Kliff has done and implement it, but he still sees the game from a different lens. So that's something you just have to take into consideration, right? When they make the next hire. Justin Evans says, I ain't going to lie, Lou. Logan Paulson was high on DQ before he was hired. He's my insider's insider. AP was already hired, so I was completely confident when AP hired And I loved, and I heard Logan speak on DQ. By the way, can you try to get Logan on the summer series? I've done that before, actually. Love the Candy episode, by the way. Thanks. I really appreciate the support there as well. Logan Paulson was extremely high on DQ because he played for him in Atlanta. So he already knew what kind of a coach, what kind of a man, what kind of a person he was going to be and what he was going to instill in that locker room. If you're looking for a culture changer, if you're looking for a coach to come in here and set a precedence and be able to do exactly the thing that Ron Rivera claimed he was going to do, which is, change the culture and kind of put us in a place, in a position where we could establish what a commander truly was. He knew DQ was the man for the job. So he had insider knowledge because he played for DQ. That's why he was so confident. No affiliation, right? I don't see Kliff leaving until he's able to win a Super Bowl with Jaden as his quarterback. That's wishful thinking. If the right job comes along, whether he's won a Super Bowl here or not, he's gone. Like, it'd be great if he could do it here. But Ben Johnson, you don't think he wanted to win a Super Bowl in Detroit with Jared Goff? Yeah, he did. But then the opportunity came to go coach Caleb Williams. He wasn't passing that up. Commanders, Justin Clemens writes, can you do more of these in-depth videos about more of our coaches? That would be dope because I love to learn more about our quarterback coaches, defensive coaches. We can see in-house guys who replace Kliff Kingsbury if it should come to that. It's harder to do that with a lot of these coaches because they don't have like a body of work to, really go off of. Of course, you've got the guys that have called plays before, like Anthony Lynn, and I think he's the only one that's actually called plays. Ken Norton's called plays as the defensive coordinator, but most of the coaches on the staff haven't been in that position before, so you can't really say what they would or wouldn't do, right? So it's a little bit harder to be able to do that. But I'm gonna highlight some other things too. I'm not done doing things like this. Off to Another World writes, as you were speaking about Kingsbury's current offense and the mentioning of the word isolation, it got me to thinking about our Steph Curry as a quarterback, which is talking about JD, along with this bit of basketball-centric organization. It's a pretty good way to kind of tie everything together. I wasn't necessarily looking at it like that, but with the whole basketball guys comment with your boy from Golden State always being around. He was even in the war room during the draft. He says, I think the Commanders are using basketball concepts on the football field, not necessarily basketball plays, but the spacing, the adjustments, the free flow. It reminds me of basketball. Hopefully our O-line produces time this year. Can't imagine how many assists JD will have this year if that happens. I just love the way they go about the game, how they see it, how they put, and again, I said this during the video, the key phrase that people like to use when talking about defense is putting defenders in conflict, right? As an offensive play caller, how do I scheme up plays that put specific defenders in conflict? You always want to make defenders have to make a choice or just be wrong, right? And Kliff does a great job of doing that because the more space you create on the field, again, it's not that dissimilar from basketball, which is why I brought it up. It's not the more space you create on the field, the more you're asking a guy to have to cover, right? In space. You can't rely on your teammates. We're isolating you. The more space there is, the more opportunity there is to operate. And so Kliff has done a masterful job of creating space on the football field. Tay times two. Tay times 2 times. That gets me every time. Kingsbury play calling was so good in the Lions game. We could have scored on every possession if it wasn't for Diami dropping that first drive, first down. We were unstoppable. And I mean, even going past that, if B-Rob doesn't F up the fourth down, trick play we were trying to run, we probably score on that possession too. But we punted. Remember, we punted on the first possession of the third quarter, if I'm not mistaken. We got the ball first to start the second half. We had a chance to put those boys away, and I think we went 3 and out. Or I think we got 1 first down and then had to punt, I believe. Ty Stroman writes, Kingsbury didn't force Daniels into a rigid system. Instead, he adapted his spread principles to maximize Daniels' rare skill set, explosive athleticism, poise under pressure, and deep ball precision. The result was a high efficiency, high explosiveness offense that was brutal to defend. which is why we love what Kliff was able to do coming in here. I just love the fact that, like you said, he didn't go full EB or Scott Turner on us. That's the thing that I just wanted to get as far away from that as possible. A guy that was so locked into his scheme and how he wanted to do things that he ignored the talent. You're always supposed to fit your scheme. Even though you have a scheme, you fit your scheme to the talent and personnel that you have. Like, Kyle Shanahan has a scheme. He's not going to change his scheme, but what he is going to do is change his play calling to fit the scheme that he has. He ran a lot of wide receiver screens. Why? Because he had Deebo Samuel, a guy who could get the ball in his hands. So he fit his offense to Deebo Samuel's skill set, right? When he was in Atlanta, he probably didn't run as many, wide receiver screens, and he didn't have a running back that he could, a receiver they could hand the football to. So he wasn't running some of those concepts and plays like that. It's just different because you adjust to what you have, right? Cool Wayne, 5732 writes, saying they simplified the offense for JD5 to be successful is not true. I don't think anybody actually said that they did that. We said that he did a really good job of keeping things simple so that JD5 could be successful early on. He didn't have to simplify the offense. It just made it easier transition, right? JD5 was changing plays at the line of scrimmage, and Kliff said the playbook was open, which was true. He came in right away, and he had a pretty good grasp of the playbook. But as we saw, first game of the season, did Jaden look comfortable? No, he didn't look comfortable. Hell, even the second game of the season against the Giants, he still didn't look as comfortable as you would have liked him to. Again, that had nothing to do with the complexity of the playbook. It was just about simplifying things and making them easy for him to digest. By the time he got to week 3, he was fully comfortable. He was well-versed in the NFL, its speed of the game, et cetera, et cetera. And then he kind of just took off from there. He says now what plays are called had to do with certain player personnel packages. True. And when other teams would take a player away or that wasn't available, and that's why certain packages weren't ran. And when they did run them, you saw what JD5 could still make it work. JD5 on the day he was drafted was already on the VR playbook, committing to being there at 5 a.m. in the offseason, et cetera, to control the offense. You're not wrong about those things. I don't think anybody was saying that he had to simplify the offense for him. He just did, right? Simplify things, make it easier for that transition. But it wasn't because JD5 couldn't handle it. It was just, hey, we're trying to make this as simple as possible. And some of those reads were very easy. I mean, how many times did we throw wide receiver screens, hitches, things close to the line of scrimmage to get him comfortable? I've said that for years. If I were a coordinator, my first 2 or 3 throws, unless I see there's a team being super aggressive, right? And maybe you come out and you do that the first couple of weeks. Now teams are looking for that, and now you hit them with a shot over the top because you want to break tendencies. But I, as a play caller, I want my quarterback in a rhythm, right? So one of the early throws, I want a completion. I don't want my quarterback starting the game 0 of 3, 0 of 5, right? I want him to start out the game with 2 easy completions. Wide receiver screen, a slant, something simple to get him going, see a completion, and now he's in a rhythm. I used to always say that about Eric Bieniemy. We were dropping back and having these deep concepts, and Hal starting the game off 1 of 5, Hal sacked 3 times. You're like, bro, something simple and easy, right? Brady used to say, I always wanted to start the game off with a completion, and he said, I really wanted to get my best guys involved early, right, so they can stay engaged. I don't understand why that's so hard of a concept to understand. And we did that with JD5 last year. A lot of quick passes at, or behind the line of scrimmage to get him in a rhythm. And then all of a sudden, he's surgical with that bitch, right? That was Kliff's doing last year. It was beautiful to watch. Beautiful, beautiful to watch. So that is Louie lurking in the comments, for the last week. You guys were awesome once again. Looking forward to doing it again next week. A lot of content coming at you now as we start to transition away from this little down period and start to rev the engine up for the start of training camp. So I thank you guys for continuing to support. And as always, you keep commenting and I'll always be lurking, forever and always be lurking in the comments. Until next time, I'm your man, Louie Tee, signing off. Have a good one. Louie Tee Network.